Captain Kim Gi-won had always dreamed of seeing what lay beyond the known stars. Today, that dream was becoming her nightmare. The exploration ship Pioneer's dream shuddered as it moved deeper into the silent sector. This was the place where ships went to disappear. No one had ever come back from here, but Ji-won and her crew were different. They were part of the Galactic Exploration Consortium, the best and bravest from many worlds working together. "Captain, something is very wrong with our instruments," said Park Min-ho from his navigation station. His usually calm voice carried a note of fear that made everyone on the bridge look up. The young officer had guided them through asteroid fields and solar storms, but now his hands shook as he tried to read the displays. Dr. Lee. Salman worked frantically at her science station alongside their alien teammates. The bug-like Vexstar clicked nervously while the crystal-bodied Helion flickered with worried colors. They had all volunteered for this mission because they believed exploration was the key to peace between their species. Now they wondered if they had made a terrible mistake. "Feels like we are being watched," whispered Choi Haeon from the communications desk. He was the youngest member of the crew, barely 25, with a wife and baby daughter waiting for him back on Earth. "Something is out there, and it does not like us being here. The ship had entered the silent sector 3 hours ago." "Oh, a lot!" Everything seemed normal. Stars looked the same, space felt the same, but slowly, things began to change. Instruments started giving impossible readings. The crew felt heavy, like the air itself was angry at them. Ji-won stood up from her captain's chair and looked out at the strange darkness ahead. She had spent her whole life preparing for this moment. As a child, she had stared at the night sky and promised herself she would touch those distant lights. Her father had been a teacher who filled her head with stories of brave explorers. Her mother had been an engineer who taught her that any problem could be solved with enough determination. "All crew, prepare for emergency jump back to safe space," Gi-won began to order. But her words stopped in her throat as something massive and invisible pressed down on the ship. The presence was older than planets, older than suns. It had watched the birth and death of galaxies. It was very, very angry. "Explorers," came a voice that spoke directly into their minds. Asterisk, "You bring chaos wherever you go. You disturb the perfect order of things." Asterisk, the bridge began to change. Around them. Minho's navigation console started to fade like smoke. The lights grew dim. Dr. Salman reached for her research notebook, but her fingers passed through it as if it were made of mist. "What is happening to us?" Haeon called out. He held up his hands and could see through them to the wall behind. Body was becoming transparent, disappearing bit by bit. Ji-won felt the same strange pulling sensation, like she was being erased from existence itself. But something deep inside her refused to accept it. She had worked too hard, dreamed too long, to simply vanish without a fight. Her human stubbornness created a small crack in whatever force was trying to delete them. Through that crack, she saw the truth. The entity destroying them was called the Curator. It was a cosmic intelligence that had been alive since the universe was young. It believed that exploration was dangerous, that curiosity led to war and suffering. So it removed explorers from history itself, making it as if they had never existed at all. The Vexstar made a chittering sound of terror as its body began to fade. The Helion's crystal form grew dim and cloudy. All around the bridge, her crew and their alien friends were disappearing. Their hopes, their dreams, their families who loved them, all of it being wiped away. "No," Gi-won whispered, but her voice was getting weaker as the erasure continued. "We chose to explore. We chose to reach for something greater." The Curator's presence pressed harder. Asterisk, choice leads to chaos. Chaos leads to destruction. Restore. Ordered by removing the cause. Asterisk, Ji-won's vision grew dark, but she held on to one last thought. Somewhere in the space between existing and not existing, she felt the echoes of other explorers who had been erased before them. Thousands of brave souls from hundreds of worlds, all deleted because they dared to wonder what lay beyond there. Home. Her crew was almost gone now. Minho's chair sat empty. Zemin's research station was bare. Hyen's communication equipment had vanished as if it were never built. Even their alien friends had been wiped clean from reality. but G1's stubborn. Human heart kept beating in the space between being and not being. As the pioneer's dream faded into nothingness, she made a silent promise to every explorer who had been forgotten. She would remember. She would find a way back. She would make sure their dreams of discovery lived on. The curator satisfied. Whisper echoed through empty space. Order restored. But in the darkness between dimensions, one human captain refused to stay erased. Professor Kim Dae-ho put down his coffee cup and stared at the photograph on his desk. Dumb. The picture showed him standing alone in his best suit, smiling at something outside the frame. It was taken at a graduation ceremony 5 years ago, but something about it made his chest feel tight with sadness. He should not be alone in this picture. Someone important was missing, but he could not remember who. His daughter Ji-won had graduated that day, he was sure of it. But what had she studied? What job did she have now? Every time he tried to remember, his mind felt foggy, like trying to grab smoke with his hands. He knew she existed. There were other photos of her as a child, school records, birthday memories, but her adult life was a blank space in his mind. She became a teacher, he said aloud to his empty office. But that felt wrong. Maybe a doctor? That felt wrong too. An explorer. The word came from nowhere, and for just a moment, his heart filled with pride. Then the feeling vanished, leaving him confused and alone, far across the galaxy. Director Velmore sat in his office at the Galactic Exploration Consortium headquarters. The large alien had served as director for 20 years, organizing missions to map unknown regions of space. His species, the Corvani, were natural organizers who loved making lists and keeping perfect records. Today, he was reviewing the exploration status of different sectors. Most areas had been visited at least once by scout ships. But one region still showed as completely unexplored, the Silent Sector. Strange, because he had a nagging feeling that they had sent a mission there recently. A joint operation with humans, perhaps. He pulled up the mission logs and searched through years of records. Nothing. No planned missions to the Silent Sector. No requests for exploration, no mention of it in any meeting notes. But the feeling would not go away. Sometimes late at night, he dreamed of a human captain with determined eyes leading a crew into dangerous unknown space. Possible, he muttered, closing the files. If we had sent a mission, I would remember it. But deep in his mind, a small voice whispered the name Gi-won. And he felt sad without knowing why. In dimensions beyond normal space and time, the curator moved like a living shadow between realities. It was ancient beyond measure, old one. The first stars were born wise, when the first civilizations learned to build fires. For millions of years, it had watched over the universe. Keeping it safe and orderly, the curator's job was simple but necessary. When species became too curious, too eager to explore and discover, it stepped in. Exploration led to conflict. Discovery led to dangerous knowledge. Better to guide civilizations toward quiet, peaceful lives where they were content with what they had. The human explorers had been particularly troublesome. Their curiosity burned like a bright fire, inspiring other species to ask dangerous questions. The insect-like Vextar had started building new types of ships after meeting humans. The Crystal Hellions had begun studying forbidden sciences. Even the careful Corvani had started approving riskier missions, so the curator had acted. The Pioneer's dream and its crew were erased completely from history. It's not just killed. That would leave records, memories, grief. Instead, they were removed from the timeline itself, as if they had never existed at all. Reality reshaped itself around the empty space they left behind. It was a perfect solution. The families of the crew forgot they had ever lost anyone. Consortium forgot it had ever planned the mission. Even the alien species they had worked with forgot the partnerships they had formed. The dangerous curiosity was contained. The universe is safer without chaos seekers, the curator thought with satisfaction. Civilizations grow stable when they stop reaching for things beyond their understanding. This was not cruelty. The curator genuinely believed it was helping. It had seen what happened when species explored too far. The makers had found a weapon that destroyed their entire solar system. the Wanderers had opened a portal to a dimension full of madness. The Star Singers had created an artificial intelligence that turned against all organic life. Better to keep everyone safe and content in their small corners of the galaxy, but as the curator reviewed its work, it sensed something wrong. The erasure should have been perfect, but there was a glitch, a single human consciousness that refused to be completely deleted. Captain Kim Guan existed in the spaces between what was real and what had been erased. The curator focused its attention on the anomaly. During the moment of erasure, something in the human's mind had created a loop in time. Her stubborn refusal to simply disappear had torn a small hole in the fabric of the deletion. She existed in that hole, neither fully real nor completely gone. Impossible, the curator decided. One small fragment cannot undo such a complete correction. But even as it thought this, the fragment was growing stronger. In the space between dimensions, Kim Gi-wan was remembering things that had never happened. She remembered her crew, her ship, her mission. And somehow those memories were beginning to reach out into the real world, creating tiny cracks in the perfect erasure. On Earth, Professor Kim Dae-ho felt a sudden urge to look up at the stars and wonder what lay beyond them. At Consortium headquarters, Director Velmore found himself approving a new exploration. Budget without knowing why, the curator watched these small changes with growing concern. The fragment was not supposed to be able to affect reality. But humans, it seemed, had a talent for doing impossible things. The Galactic Consortium Council was having a normal Tuesday meeting when the impossible happened. Director Velmore was reading a report about mining rights when the air in the middle of the chamber began to shimmer like heat waves. The assembled representatives from dozens of worlds looked up in confusion as reality itself seemed to tear apart like old cloth. A woman fell through the tier and crashed onto the polished marble floor. She was human, and that much was clear, but she looked like she had been through a war. Her blue uniform was torn and faded, covered in stains that looked like stardust and engine oil. Her dark hair was streaked with premature gray, and her face was lined with years of worry and exhaustion. Most disturbing of all, she looked like she had aged decades in the 5 minutes since the meeting had started. "Me," she gasped, struggling to push herself up on shaking arms. "Please, you have to listen to me." The council chamber erupted in confused chatter. Representatives from the crystal-bodied Hellions flickered with alarm colors. The insect-like Vexstar clicked nervously. Even the usually calm Corvani shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Velmore stood up, his large frame casting a shadow over the strange woman. "Security team to the council chamber immediately. We have an unauthorized individual who appears to be suffering from space madness." "No, no, no." The woman scrambled to her feet, swaying as if she might fall again. "My name is Kim Ji-won. I am the captain of the exploration vessel Pioneer's Dream. We were sent to map the Silent Sector 5 years ago, but we were erased from history." Murmurs of disbelief filled the chamber. Several representatives checked their personal data devices, searching for any record of this ship or its captain. They found nothing. "There is no record of any such mission," announced Counselor Thrix, a tall being with silver skin and 3 eyes. "The Silent Sector has never been explored. No ship has ever been sent there." Giwan's eyes filled with desperate tears. "That's because we were deleted." The curator, an ancient entity that hates exploration, it removed us from existence itself. But I survived somehow, trapped between what was real and what was erased. The security guards arrived, large armored beings from various species. They moved toward Giwan with the calm efficiency of professionals dealing with a mentally unstable individual. "Park Minho," Giwan shouted, backing away from the guards. "Was my navigator, 28 years old, from Seoul. He wanted to map every star in the galaxy. Lee So-man was our chief scientist, brilliant, curious about everything. And Choi-han, our communications officer, he had a baby daughter named Nari. The names meant nothing to anyone in the chamber. No such people existed in any records. No families mourned them because, as far as reality was concerned, they had never been born." Dr. Lee worked with the Vexstar science team, Jiwon continued. "Desperately. They were developing new sensor technology together. And Minho? He learned how to speak Helion Crystal Song because he thought it was beautiful. Some of the Vexstar representatives clicked softly to each other. The words felt familiar somehow, like an old dream they could not quite remember. The Helions flickered with uncertain colors. "The woman is clearly delusional," Velmore declared, though something about her words made his stomach feel heavy with an emotion he could not name. "Remove her to the medical facility for evaluation." The guards reached for her arms. Something extraordinary happened. The air around Giwan began to shimmer again, and for just a moment, the entire council chamber filled with ghostly images. They saw a young human man bent over a navigation console, his face bright with excitement as he plotted a course to unknown stars. They saw a woman in a white lab coat working alongside insect-like scientists, all of them chattering excitedly about their discoveries. They saw a communications officer with kind eyes holding a photo of a baby while talking to crystal beings about their hopes for the future. The images lasted only seconds before vanishing, but they left the council chamber in stunned silence. "What was that?" whispered Counselor THRIX.G1, felt a terrible pressure building in her mind, like a giant hand trying to squeeze her thoughts into nothing. The curator had found her. "You should not exist," came a voice that only she could hear. It was old, and tired, and absolutely certain of *its righteousness. Asterisk, submit to correction. Let the erasure be complete. The universe is safer without explorers like you. Asterisk, the pressure increased, trying to push her back into the empty space between realities, where she had been trapped for 5 years. Around her, the council members began to look confused, as if they were forgetting what they had just seen. "Never." Giwan whispered through gritted teeth, "I won't let you erase us. I won't let you make the galaxy smaller and sadder and more." Afraid, her stubborn refusal sent cracks spreading through the curator's perfect erasure. Somewhere in the space between dimensions, other voices began to stir, the echoes of explorers from 100 different species, all deleted by the curator over millions of years. All waiting in the darkness for someone to remember them. A Vexstar scientist who had mapped dangerous nebulae. A Hellion artist who had tried to paint the birth of stars. A Corvani philosopher who would ask forbidden questions about the nature of existence. All of them began to remember themselves. And reality trembled. The small scout ship Remembrance floated quietly above the green world of Kethmer, space. It looked like a perfect paradise. Rolling hills covered with golden grain. Peaceful rivers winding through quiet valleys, and small towns where the people lived simple, happy lives. But Captain Kim Giwan knew the truth. This world had once been home to the greatest explorers in the galaxy. She guided her salvaged ship down to the surface, landing near the ancient ruins that the current inhabitants ignored. The Kethmoran. People of today were farmers and craftsmen who never looked up at the stars. They could not remember that their ancestors had once built ships to sail between worlds. Giwan walked through the crumbling stone structures, her boots crunching on fallen leaves. The buildings were covered with strange crystalline formations that caught the sunlight and threw back rainbow colors. Most people would think they were just pretty decorations, but Giwan knew better. "These crystals remember," she whispered too, herself running her fingers over the smooth surface of one wall. The curator erased the Kethmerans from history, but some memories run too deep to completely destroy. The crystals began to glow under her touch, pulsing with a soft blue light. Suddenly, the ruins filled with ghostly images from the past. Giwan saw tall, scaled beings with golden eyes preparing for a great journey. They wore uniforms covered with star maps and carried equipment for exploring unknown worlds. Their faces were bright with curiosity and excitement. She watched as the Kethmoran explorers said goodbye to their families and boarded sleek ships that could travel faster than light. They were heading out to discover new worlds, to map dangerous nebulae, to answer questions that no one had ever asked before. Then came the darkness. The curator's presence filled the ghostly scene like a cold wind. The exploring ships never returned. The families forgot they had ever had loved ones who wanted to see the stars. The entire civilization was gently guided away from exploration and toward peaceful farming. "You see now," said a voice behind her. Juan spun around to find herself face to face with the curator itself. It was not a physical being, but something made of pure thought and ancient memory. It appeared as a shifting shadow with eyes like dying stars. "I am not evil," the curator said, and its voice carried the sadness of billions of years. "I have watched civilizations destroy themselves because they explored too far, too fast. I have seen the terrible prices they paid for their curiosity." More images flowed through the crystal ruins. Guan saw the Valkyrie, a proud species that discovered a weapon so powerful it cracked their own sun in half. She saw the Zephyrians, who opened a portal to a dimension full of madness and lost their sanity forever. She saw dozens of other civilizations that had reached too far and fallen into darkness. Wars over new territories, the curator continued. Dangerous technologies unleashed without wisdom. Plagues brought back from distant worlds. "I have seen it all, Captain Juan. Every time a species becomes too curious, disaster follows." Juan felt the genuine pain in the ancient being's words. The curator was not a monster. It was a tired guardian that had been watching over the galaxy for so long that it had forgotten the difference between safety and imprisonment. "So you decided to guide them toward peace," Juan said quietly. "You remove their desire to explore, to discover, to grow. You make them content with small, safe lives." "Yes," the curator replied. "They become happy, stable, safe. No more wars over resources. No more dangerous experiments. No more species driving themselves extinct through reckless ambition." Giwan looked around at the crystal ruins, seeing the memories of a people who had once dreamed of touching the stars. Now their descendants were content to tend their crops and never wonder what lay beyond their world. "But they also become less than they could be," she said. "No great art inspired by the beauty of distant worlds. No magnificent discoveries that could help other species. No growth, no change, no hope for something better. Growth leads to suffering," the curator said firmly, "and stagnation leads to death." Giwan touched another crystal, watching it light up with the memory of a young Kethmoran child, pointing at the night sky and asking her parents what lay beyond the stars. "You have made the galaxy smaller, quieter, more predictable. But you have not made it better." The curator was silent for a long moment, its shadowy form rippling like water. Around them, the crystal ruins continued to pulse with forgotten memories of adventure and discovery. "Look at them now," Juan continued, gesturing toward the peaceful valley below. "The Kethmorans live safe, simple lives. But they have lost the spark that made them special. They have forgotten how to dream." "Dreams lead to nightmares," the curator replied, but its voice was less certain now. Sometimes Giwan agreed. "But without dreams, what is life worth living?" She turned to face the ancient entity directly, her human eyes bright with the same curiosity that had driven her species to reach for the stars. "You are one human," the curator said. "What can you possibly change?" Juan smiled, and in that smile was the echo of every human who had ever looked up at the night sky and wondered what amazing things waited to be discovered. You are about to find out. In the space between what was real and what never existed, Captain Kim Giwan stood face to face with the curator's true form. Here, the ancient entity appeared as it really was. Not a shadow or voice, but a vast mind that had been carrying the weight of the entire galaxy for billions of years. The space around them was neither dark nor light, but something beyond normal. Understanding, swirling colors that had no names drifted past like cosmic winds. Time moved differently here. Seconds could feel like years, or years could pass in a heartbeat. "I will give you one last chance," the curator said, its voice echoing from everywhere at once. "I can fix everything.
Nice.
Your crew, your ship, your mission, all of it can be real again." As it spoke, images began to form in the strange space around. Them, Juan saw the pioneer's dream as it should have been, returning home triumphant from the silent sector. She saw herself giving a speech to thousands of people, telling them about the wonders they had discovered. Most painfully, she saw her crew alive and happy. Park Min-ho was laughing at one of her terrible jokes about stellar navigation. Lee So-min was bouncing with excitement as she explained a new discovery to a roomful of scientists. Choi-hoon was video calling his wife and daughter, showing them pictures of beautiful alien sunsets. "It can all be real," the curator promised. "Your father will have his complete graduation photo. Your crew will have the lives they deserved. The galaxy will have the discoveries you would have made. All I ask is that you forget this conversation. Forget what you learned about me. Accept the peace I offer." The temptation was almost overwhelming. One could feel how easy it would be to say yes, to let herself sink back into a normal timeline where none of this cosmic horror had ever happened. She could have her friends back, her mission back, her normal life back. "Every species I have guided faced this same choice," the curator continued. "The Kethmarans chose peace over adventure. The Veltari chose safety over discovery. The Great Hegemony chose stability over change. They are all happier now. Why must humans be different?" Ju-won closed her eyes and thought about her father. Professor Kim Dae-ho, sitting alone in his office and staring at a photograph that felt wrong. She thought about the crystal ruins on Kethmar filled with the ghosts of dreams that would never be fulfilled. She thought about all the civilizations across the galaxy that had forgotten how to look up at the stars and wonder. She remembered something Park Min-ho had said during their last real conversation before the erasure. "Captain, you know what I love most about being an explorer? It's not the places we find. It's the fact that we never stop looking. Even when we get lost, even when we're scared, we keep searching for something amazing." Because Gi-won said quietly, opening her eyes. To meet the curator's ancient gaze, the risk of wonder is better than the certainty of emptiness. Her words rang through the space between dimensions like a bell struck in a cathedral. The sound grew louder and louder, spreading outward in waves that crossed impossible distances. Suddenly, cracks began to appear in the erasure, not just around Gi-won, but everywhere the curator had ever imposed its will. On 1,000 worlds, people stopped what they were doing and looked up at the sky. Scientists in laboratories remembered theories they had abandoned. Children asked their parents questions that had no easy answers. On Earth, Professor Kim Dae-ho felt a sudden, overwhelming urge to call his daughter. He did not know why, he could not even remember her phone number, but something deep in his heart told him she was coming home. "You don't understand the chaos you're unleashing," the curator cried, its form beginning to flicker as its control over reality started to crumble. "Wars will be fought over new territories. Dangerous technologies will be discovered. Species will destroy themselves." "I understand," Ju-won replied, feeling the memories of millions of erased explorers flowing back into existence like a dam bursting, "and we choose it anyway." The space around them exploded with returning possibilities. The pioneer's dream materialized in normal space, its crew blinking in confusion as they suddenly remembered 5 years of non-existence. Across the galaxy, mothballed exploration ships received new orders. Universities reopened departments that had been mysteriously closed. Families remembered loved ones they had forgotten. But something unexpected happened. As the curator watched its carefully maintained order collapse, it began to see something it had forgotten during its eons of imposed control. In the returning chaos, there was beauty. In the dangerous questions, there was hope. In the choice to reach beyond safe boundaries, there was the magnificent complexity that made life worth living. Captain Kim Gu-won found herself back on the bridge of the pioneer's dream, looking out at stars that suddenly seemed full of infinite possibility. Behind her, Park Min-ho was already plotting courses to unexplored systems, whistling cheerfully as he worked. Lee So-min was making excited notes about questions they needed to investigate. Captain Choi-hoon called from the communications station, his voice bright with wonder. "We're receiving messages from ships all across the galaxy. It seems like everyone just remembered they wanted to be explorers." Gi-won smiled, and in that smile was everything that made humans special, stubborn, curious, forever reaching toward tomorrow's wonders despite yesterday's warnings. "Then let's go explore," she said, and the universe suddenly felt bigger again.